The following discussion is not necessarily the views of all involved. The goal is to start open and honest discussion in the Christian worldview. Like all things, weigh what you hear with what you know and join us in our pursuit for the truth. Enjoy the podcast.
And we see that Israel kind of sucks. They don't really...
I'm a colorblind guy, so take this with a grain of salt. Colors suck. It's not a coincidence, Caleb. It's the Bible.
All right, I'd like to welcome everyone to the Second Rate Saints podcast. I'm one of your hosts here, Caleb. To my left is...
I am Colton. First time I think I've been beside you.
Yeah.
But to my left is still...
Joshua, it is, you've always been to my left, except for the episodes that you were not here.
I'm not to your left, but yes.
Sorry, to my right. Yeah, I just get sucked in with the whole to my left thing. Anyways, to my left is...
It's me, Caleb again. And so you will have noticed we are sadly, again, missing Stewart, my good friend. And we're missing Joel. That's a bit of a bummer. So Joel's not here. So
Who's not our good friend, apparently.
no.
He's a very dear
Joel.
friend.
Hi. Because Joel's not here, I get to do the media plug. So, guys, check us out on Instagram. Joel does a bunch of cool stuff on Instagram. It's really fun.
Very active.
Yeah, does some polls. We're trying to get more traction and interaction on there. Super fun. If you're watching us on YouTube, if you want it more in like an audio format for when you're traveling or like listening to in the car or whatever, we're on Spotify and Apple Podcast as well. And check out our website. We have blog posts there. We have book reviews. Most of the stuff in our What Have You Read section. We actually have, reviewed sections, and there's star rating and like an actual breakdown, a little bit of a paragraph of us describing what it is and a link to it. And email us. Tell us what you think, what you like, what you're reading. What are you doing? What questions do you have? We love it.
We love interaction.
It's awesome. Josh, did you do some reading? What have you read?
What have I read? I read a very short story by a great author named Ernest Hemingway.
You may have
Who's
heard
that?
of him.
You may have
don't think
heard
I've
of
heard
this
of
guy. A very eminent author. One of the greats, one would say. I read his little book, The Old Man and the Sea. Some editions have a little copy of him fishing as one of the pictures in the book. I think it's very fun and cute. Yeah, look. Anyways, for the two guys that are in here, there's just a picture of Ernest Hemingway in the book.
This is an audio format, Josh.
I know. No, but I'm showing you guys because it's funny.
Why is there a picture of him fishing on it?
Because the story is about an old man fishing, and Ernest Hemingway is an old man.
Wow.
Anyway, so this story is, as I said, a classic. What it is, first of all, is simply a story of an old man who's probably in his 60s or like 70s in Cuba, who goes out on his little tiny rowboat to go hunt for a fish, and he has not caught anything in 84 days.
That's some bad luck.
That's some bad luck. But fishers are relentless in their hunt, in their pursuit. And this story is the origin. Sorry, it's not the origin.
Inspiration.
It's the inspiration for other like fishing movies and stories where the guy wants that one fish.
Jaws.
Yeah. Now this takes like notes from like Moby Dick, where it's like going for that one whale, but that's specifically like a story of revenge.
Yep.
But whereas this is like, it's a story of one man who was searching for this fish because the fish is symbolic for success and happiness in life. And the story is like an 80-page parable of the struggle and the suffering of life to get that, for whatever that is for the person, the happiness, retirement, the good family, fulfillment, stuff like that. And the the willingness and the human spirit and the determinism and the relentlessness to achieve it, even if it kills you.
Right.
And
Does he die?
he falls asleep at the end of the book. But he is severely injured because he doesn't have a fishing rod. He has heavy line because he's hunting a marlin. And similar to the Jonah story, it's regarded as great, large, way bigger than any marlin that has ever been around. And a marlin is a famous, like every like fishing store, every fishing commercial will have like a marlin as the chief fish. So it's symbolic of like the most important thing. And the man goes out and it's just him. He catches the fish one day and he's getting pulled by it. And he is severely educated on the patterns of the tides and the movements of the water, the streams in the Gulf, how the fish behave, the light levels, and where to put your weights. He's perfectly skilled, and there's people surrounding him in this area of the ocean that have like giant trolleys with like 100 fishing lines, and they're successful pulling in fish after fish after fish, but they're younger and they're not as learned as he is. They have all these other benefits, youth, that are benefiting them, but he doesn't. He's at the end of his age.
Rinky-dink old rowboat.
Yeah. And so like when he catches this fish, it's much bigger than him and weighs more than him and his boat combined. He wraps the line around his body and then gets dragged for 4 days until the fish gets too tired to fight him. And basically every time the fish pulls and it pulls him, it eventually gets tired and he wraps it one more time around his body.
Right.
Shortening the distance between him and the fish.
Because he's wrapping it around him, when it pulls, it would cut into him.
It's cutting into him. It's cutting into his hand. It's cutting into his arm. He's like 70. So like he's like holding and straining with his whole body for a while. So like parts of his body go numb from falling asleep, but he won't let go. This whole time he's catching other smaller fish, hunting this thing so that he can eat. But completely disregards them as a big enough glory as hunting for this fish. And it's a beautiful tale of this, and he like talks to it, kind of similar to how in The Life of Pi talks to the tiger as if it's a real person. And then sadly, as we all know, he gets the fish and he comes back, but he can't get it onto his boat, so he's dragging it behind him. He had to harpoon it in the heart to kill it. So sharks are biting at it as he's traveling home. And by the time he gets back, only the head is uneaten. Right? And it's basically what it is. It's the story of you live your whole life fighting for wealth, money, prestige, fulfillment, but it doesn't last. You eventually die.
Right. And you ignore the smaller prestiges and good things that you can obtain right now that are good.
That don't kill you.
And sustaining.
Yeah. But the whole town regards him as the greatest of fishermen when he gets home. Because they see the skeleton of this fish and they're like, this thing is the greatest fish that has ever been caught. Right? And it doesn't matter that he didn't get to eat it. He doesn't care. It doesn't matter that he didn't get to enjoy the thing while he lived. Right. It was the pursuit of the thing that was worth it.
Okay. So, yes, it's an old story.
Yes.
People know it. It's actually, 80 some odd pages you said?
Yep. Very short.
What would be your reason to tell someone, you should read this classic, even though you know the story, you know the main argument, it's short, but other than, hey, I read a classic book and I can tell you what it's about.
Or I had to read this in school.
You will see countless references to books like these in common literature and movies and TV.
And themes from it that are applicable to so many things.
And so that's the easy answer. Okay. If you want to understand what literature is talking about today, you have to understand what it's referencing, which is kind of similar to our topic later on.
Yep.
Which is to understand what we see now, it's all patterns from the past. And then also what you get is, you become a smarter person. When you read smart people, you become a smarter person.
That's the hope, at least.
That's the hope. And Ernest Hemingway, born in America, like living in America. He fought in the Spanish Civil War, I believe.
Civil War?
Yeah, like right before World War II.
Oh, the actual Spanish Civil War.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
So he has
one
a lot
of the
of
greatest American.
he certainly is the greatest American author.
Yeah.
He is America's Dostoevsky.
Sure. Is he the one with the saddest story in 3 words, which is, or 4 words or whatever, 1 sentence, which is the baby shoes never worn?
Yeah.
And it's just like,
Yeah, that's pretty good.
yeah.
And like what is the other book? His other books, For Whom the Bells Toll.
He's so many books.
Yeah, he has
And
so many
poems
books,
and-
and a lot of it is derived from his life, and so he's taking from real world experience. Great books, but as a result, you get to see the wisdom of a man who lived in a hard time, and also the connections between. So this man lives in America, right, steeped in European history because of where he fought as a freedom fighter, I believe. Or America helping the nationalists side, and then Germany was helping the other side.
Fascists. Yeah, but
so they help the democracy.
Yeah. And so he's steeped in Christian culture. And what you see is a lot of what he says is in the Bible already.
though he himself not being a Christian.
Yeah. And so this story has a lot of the same themes that that's the book of Ecclesiastes brings out. Right. About the pursuit of greatness, glory, life, wealth.
And it's worth.
Is it really worth it?
Right.
Right?
I guess it ultimately is you better find joy in your toil.
Yeah.
Which is the whole kind of conclusion, right?
Yeah.
That's very cool.
Yeah. And so you get, it's definitely a book of wisdom told in the format of a parable as a man going fishing.
All right.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So I would recommend it. And it's 80 pages. You can get through it real quick.
All right. Out of 5, quick.
Ooh.
How many halos?
Oh, cover and content.
Okay. Cover first is bad because this is part of the Acturus, bargain bin. So like if you go to Indigo, it's $6 a book, regardless of the size.
Right.
So it's an easy way to get points at Indigo. But anyways, it's a real easy way if you don't care about the covers of your books. And some of them are like, okay.
This one's in the middle of the road.
I
for
like
that.
this one. You're being too harsh.
Like, well, no. What it is it's not the cover. It's obviously a bargain cover.
I love how harsh he is on book covers.
It's very
But
fun.
it does have a marlin on it.
Especially the pine cone from the previous one, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm an idiot.
No.
But as a book, out of 5, 4.5.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why the half?
Because
you don't like the cover?
4 is too little.
4 is too little?
Yeah.
Okay.
5 is too much. So.
All right, fair enough.
Yeah.
All right. So
we have a topic.
This is actually the launching point of what will turn to be an ongoing series in our podcast. There's going to be 2, and we'll address the second when it comes around. But we're going to do an ongoing series of biblical theology and systematic. This is the first in the biblical theology, and so this isn't like a 1 of 32 parts or 3 of 4 parts. This is just an ongoing, hey, every now and then we're going to cover a biblical theology. Most of the time they're going to be pulled from books themselves, books that we've read and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of decent series on biblical theology, and one that you've heard us cover often is the short studies and system
and new studies as well.
Yeah. I don't think we're going to be doing new studies, all of them. Right. Because new studies often focus on books themselves, which is fine.
They're also more academic.
Yeah. And so there might be occasional ones from new studies, but I think we're going to more focus on whole Bible or New Testament and Old Testament.
And typology stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so we're going to address the wide range of things. covering more like the canonical approach as well, things that would fall into that. Also more the historical critical, the redemption, history redemption. So anything that would kind of fall in that whole Bible or New Testament and Old Testament Bible theologies.
And we're going to judge them harshly.
No.
Oh, darn.
Before we jump straight into the book and even Strongstad's stuff, what do we mean when we say biblical theology versus like systematic theology?
So it's the way you approach things. Biblical theology would be, this is something that they debate even amongst themselves, is the theological content that the Bible itself is trying to get across.
Right.
And so what often happens, like this is very common, and you'll see this in the one we're about to cover, it will follow a pattern or it will follow a theme throughout the whole Bible. Sometimes that theme is decided by the author, and then they want to see what does the Bible say about this. Sometimes it'll go, okay, this is clear. This theme is clearly being communicated by several of the biblical authors. I'm going to try to find the connection point and see how that theme develops. So sometimes it's a little arbitrary. Sometimes it's clearly this is what the Bible's trying to get across in this very like a reoccurring pattern.
And a obvious example of that would be covenants.
Yeah.
How God interacts with humanity.
Or kingship.
Yeah.
So we'll be interacting with a lot of the biblical theology series, and we'll be covering over some of our own essays that we wrote when we were in college, and some stuff that we might just come up with. Hey, you know what? There's no book on this, but I would love to do this in a, in the ongoing biblical theology series. Systematic is far more like practical. What does the church believe about X? And so it's less about what the Bible is trying to get across per se.
Right.
It's more about how do I deal with this idea, this question right here, right now, after 2,000 years of Christians mulling over this idea, different traditions, philosophy interjecting. Where does science play into our understanding of the Bible? And so we'll go more into depth into how that will work in our first episode in our systematic theology series.
Okay.
But this time, this is the first one. And I'm very happy to announce that we're doing Roger Strongstad, the late Roger Strongstad, Pentecostal theologian, Canadian Pentecostal theologian, the book is called A Pentecostal Theology, Turning Points in the Story of Redemption.
Yep. And he was the biblical theology professor at
resident
Western Pentecostal Bible Theology.
Yes.
He had two
doctorates, known as Summit Pacific.
Two doctorates in divinity. Well-educated guy, well-respected guy. You'll notice if you go to our website with the book reviews, you'll see this has been both Joel and myself have given this one a review. I think we're just waiting on you guys to give it a review.
Yet to review.
Okay. Regardless, just if you guys have seen the cover, Josh, cover 1 out of 5.
Oh, yeah, guys, this is a
1 or a 0.5?
This is a 0.5.
No, it's way higher than that.
This is a 0.5.
This is a solid 2.5.
I can't see half the colors on here.
Okay, yeah. Josh is blind boy.
No. I think what this is the kind of book you would find. Okay, let me be very clear. The content is good. The theologian is great. He did not design this cover.
Yeah.
I think it stands out.
I think...
Yeah, because it's piss yellow.
That's true.
The colors... Now, I'm a colorblind guy, so take this with a grain of salt. Colors suck. But as a simple document, this looks like a journal cover.
It does.
It does.
And not a biblical theology for...
An official book.
A biblical theology by a preeminent theologian for a denomination.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fair.
And so, is it... Yeah.
So I'm going to go over...
Great book, though.
I've gone down to 2.
I'm going to go over what type of biblical theology it is, like what's his general approach, and a little bit of the history of how this book came to be, because it's worth noting, especially if any of you listeners actually pick it up. it says it's turning points in the story of redemption. It's very history driven. It views things from a very, very historical lens. And in modern lingo, if this book was published, it would probably say in the in redemption history, turning points in redemption history, because that whole track of biblical theology likes to call itself redemption history, redemption history. And it's very much recording God's actions in what those theologians would call secular history and their theological impact in quote unquote secular history. Yeah, that's kind of his framework, very history based. And so you'll see him reference stuff that's not in the Bible in it. Not a whole lot, but it is focused on the actual historical events of, especially once it gets into the New Testament. And like the siege of Jerusalem and stuff like that.
Right.
So yeah, it's a very history focus, less themes. And what he does is he brings a pattern that he sees repeated, and which we'll get into more into.
Yep.
Final little prelude. He wrote this. Like supposedly most of this was written by dictation. And the editors at the press did not edit the book very well.
No.
Both himself and I know a couple of the professors that worked with him were very upset about it.
Even a cursory view of me just reading through it just to take notes every once in a while, I'm like, okay, I don't get what's going on here because there's clearly some spelling mistakes, like calling the 6th the 7th or something like that. And it's not edited very well.
Yeah, which is a bummer. It's a real big bummer. However, it is only just over 200 pages long. It's specifically targeted at undergrads. And that's one of the big things you'll see with biblical theology. There's no you have the short studies in biblical theology, which is like 150 pages. That could really be read by laymen. It's not like your fourth year undergrad. That's a little beneath them. But the jump from that up to another one, you're talking 400, 500, 600 page or bigger of a biblical theology. So this is kind of a rare find in that middle ground. It's good in that it's small. It doesn't overload the reader, and it's very approachable. But the pattern, the 7 cycles. Sorry.
Oh, also, I was going to say, if you read it, you could probably skip Old Testament and New Testament theology at Summit Pacific College.
Yes, you could.
Yeah, you just take the final exam.
The pattern. He sees a pattern. That's his whole basis. Is there's patterns. Monkey sees pattern. Colton, what is the pattern? What's his main argument?
So he talks about these things called turning points. That is the name of the title, Turning Points as the Story of Redemption. These turning points are basically groupings where he sees a pattern of a start of a return to right worship, the spread of sin. There's this divine judgment that comes from God because of that sin, and then a new start that begins because of it. So start, sin spreads, there's judgment, and a new start. And this pattern keeps repeating itself as a general overview of certain parts of the Bible. He says 7 times. There is...
there's like the first 3 take place in the first few chapters of Genesis.
Yeah.
Actually,
the first 3
first 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting.
The first 3 cover only the Pentateuch. Only the first 5 books of the Bible, and then the rest are kind of a lot, covering way more than that. With the 6th and 7th covering the entire New Testament. This is the order of the cycles that he points out. The first cycle, he says that this pattern of start, sin, judgment, start, is from the creation in Genesis 1 to the flood in Genesis 8 with Noah. This something to be noted is that when he lists these turning points. He highlights this return to right worship, as I mentioned before, that when sin is brought in and then God judges, the new start begins with everything going back to being obedience to God.
Mm-hmm. Like a restoration.
Yes.
Yeah.
Redemption or restoration, absolutely. But there's also, he brings up agents, agents of God, people who represent God's work on behalf of bringing about this, either bringing about this judgment or bringing about this restoration. Usually it's the restoration. And so from the first cycle, the agents would be Adam, specifically, Adam and Eve.
Mm-hmm. And Noah.
And Noah. Noah more so in the second.
The thing is with his cycle split up, Noah is the method by which the new start begins. His life is preserved. However, the quote unquote start of the second cycle is the return to right worship.
Yes.
And so the survival of Noah and his family is the fourth part of the first cycle, and the return to right worship of Noah and his family is the first part of the second.
Right.
His lines, and we'll get into this later on, but his distinctions are not always super clear. But and they start to blur together. Some of that may be on purpose.
Yep.
But yeah, that's his kind of, Noah is an agent in both.
Well, in all of them, there's a connecting point that ties the previous one to the next one, except for the fourth one.
Yeah.
But this first cycle actually only covers about 8 chapters of the Bible, from Genesis 1 to 8. What's even funnier is that the second cycle only covers 3.
Yeah.
It covers from Noah to the Tower of Babel. This one is very short. It covers Noah's return to right worship, and then Babel being struck with the confusion of languages and humanity being spread out as judgment. But that leads into the third cycle, which then he chooses, rather than this top-down view, it kind of gets a little more personal. That starts with Abraham and goes all the way to Israel's wilderness wanderings in Exodus, or in Numbers.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which, again, it's not 3 chapters, and this time it's 4 books.
Yeah, they keep getting wider.
They do get wider.
Yeah. It's interesting in that there's another pattern that starts to occur. It's not in his thing, although it's clearly represented, like he's aware of it.
Right.
Sin, even after the right worship, there's this but sin still festers, right? Because you have Ham, and he's the one who sees Moses' nakedness.
Yes.
And that's immediately after the return to right worship. And then sin spreads, and then they Nimrod builds the city. Everybody comes back together to oppose God. And we covered that in our Tower of Babel episode. If you haven't listened to that, check that out. Or if you really liked it, maybe listen to it again. But yeah, God comes down, confuses their languages. They spread across the face of the earth like they're told to do.
Yep.
Interestingly enough, that's kind of the weird, at least to me, the return to right worship there, it's not defined if it occurs as the last segment of a cycle or the beginning of the next cycle. Because in that framework, or in that event, Abraham's calling is the return to right worship.
Yes.
Which is in the third cycle. And so the second cycle doesn't have a return to right worship.
Unless you
It's God
take
forcing it to some extent.
unless you take them obeying the now spread.
Yeah. Which
As the obedience as worship.
Yes.
Yeah.
But speaking of that third one that goes to the wilderness wanderings, the next one continues straight off of that. Deuteronomy sort of skipped over because it's part of the previous one. But this goes from Joshua, the story of Joshua going into the land of Canaan. The reinstating of right worship here is him doing what he was told to do, that Israel was told to do in Numbers, and them not doing it, them not going into the Holy Land. And now he is actually going into the Holy Land. I say Holy Land, like I'm a crusader or something like that.
Deus Vult.
The Promised Land. And this one from Joshua, it covers quite a lot of history. It covers all the way from him invading to the judges and how they lived, to the time of the kings, and then to both Israel and Judah's exile, which are at two different times, but both Judah and Israel represent the whole of the Hebrews, which are part of his agent.
And the creative and destructive aspect in that one is the creation of a nation and then the destruction of the nation.
Yes. But the new start, or like the quasi new start, is the last as the last segment in the cycles, is the promise to, hey, I'm going to keep you.
Yes.
It's okay. You are not
remnant.
forgotten.
Yes.
Yeah. And so this is like the establishment of God's people away from the Holy Land.
Yes.
Do you want to describe that more?
You see, like there's the, do we put roots down or not? And the whole, there's this, it puts roots down, buy property, actually get married, stuff like that. And you see it even in Daniel as well, right? Or there's an expectation of, hey, no, you're going to be in captivity for a while.
Yes.
God has not forgotten. God will not abandon you. And you see that most explicitly communicated in Esther, where God's name actually isn't even mentioned, yet the entire theme is God protects his people even when they're not in the promised land. So it's...
Then what about the rebuilding of the temple?
Well, we'll get to it.
That's the fifth cycle.
Yes, that is part of the fifth and final one of the Old Testament. The next two are covering, but I'll get there.
No, my only problem is because the fourth.
No, shh.
Okay.
Wait, the fourth?
You have the new start as Canaan, like them living, like not living in the promised land, and then the start of the fifth is the temple.
Yes, specifically it's rebuilding, which is the restoration of the worship.
Yeah,
but
in Ezra and Nehemiah.
What do you mean? I don't understand.
The discard. So the end of the fourth cycle says new start is being okay living outside of the Holy Land. Yeah, but the new start of the fifth is
I see
the temple.
It skips over.
So you have two starts.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's part of the whole. It's built within the whole cycle a little bit, where it's like you have start or new start, right?
Okay.
Spread of sin, judgment, and then some kind of end or new start, like some kind of like conclusionary things will carry on. However, the new like the new start, the first section of any cycle is more like this is a new movement. This is action is required. Whereas the fourth
agent.
Yeah. Whereas the fourth part in either of the cycles is normally represented as this is the fallout, but this is the new standing of the people of God after judgment.
Yep.
So, the terminology of the new and the new is a little frustrating.
Yeah.
It should also be mentioned that between the fourth and the fifth cycle, there is actually a gap, even in his how he depicts his cycles. Whereas the previous ones had like connection points that carried over. This connection point is the remnant, but it's not really part of the new cycle because that generation dies off. There's a 70-year gap that he even recognizes between the start of this and the start of the next cycle. Yeah. Which in the fifth cycle, like you said, Joshua, it starts with Joshua, the son of Shealtiel.
It's a Joshua again.
Yes. This is the second time Joshua's name has been mentioned, although the previous one was son of Nun, the one that brought them into the promised land right after Moses. And this one is the one that returned from the exile and the rebuilding of the temple. This one goes... Now, you would think that someone who's just thinking about the Bible and it's being broken up would probably think that this would end at either Malachi at the end of the Old Testament or with Jesus at the start of the New Testament. But actually, this one doesn't end with Jesus. It ends with the destruction of the second temple. The beginning of starts with the building of the second temple, and this ends with the destruction of the second temple in 70 CE. See?
Well, and it's the
80.
spread of sin that he gets after. And I don't explicitly remember if he makes this argument in his discussion of the fifth cycle or in the discussion of the sixth. There's like Malachi mentions the hypocrisy in their worship, right? They're not actually worshiping. They're just going through the actions. They don't actually know God. They're just doing the
He
thing.
wants your hearts.
Which is the very thing that Jesus confronts.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's that blend in there where both of the cycles are, one cycle is dying out and the other cycle is coming into place.
And the illusion that some people bring is you see that start in the end of Nehemiah.
Yes.
With the book ending as him saying, "Remember me, Lord, for all the good things that I've done for you." And that's an interesting conversation because like he is seen as the person that does lead God's people with Ezra back to the Holy Land on the account of Cyrus. But it also does seem that his motivations are not exactly pure.
Yeah.
Similar to Jonah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With the end of the 5th cycle, that starts right near Jesus. We'll get into the 6th and 7th, but I kind of want to talk about the 1st cycle again. Go over the 5, what they mean in the Old Testament, and then we can talk about the second half of his book, because half the book covers the Old Testament, and the second half covers the New, because he kind of approaches them differently.
Yeah. His methodology kind of shifts.
A little bit. And his pattern is more easily recognizable in the Old Testament. It gets a little more complicated in the New. We had mentioned that the 1st cycle starts with creation and ends at the flood. But we also mentioned that there's things like agents, things like this restoration of right worship. What kind of worship, for a restoration of right worship I keep saying white worship, but no. What is worship look like at the beginning of this? Beginning of creation. What is the worship that's being restored?
It looks like obeying God's command to have dominion over the earth and work the garden.
Yes.
And walking with God, being his imager appropriately. And in turn, you see that develop into priestly.
Priestly roles, and also the image of God dominion stuff starts to become a kingship motif.
And he draws this connection from the Bible where it says things like the image of God thing is reiterated with Noah. The things that were told to Adam are reiterated mostly to Noah again. And a lot of like we said, a lot of these connection points tend to show that there is a new start.
Yeah. Well, it's especially with Noah and Adam, like the ancient Jewish understanding of their cosmology, right? Like the waters, the chaotic waters that encompass their whole world in their understanding, crash down upon everything. In their mindset, it would be a return to a quasi, like the waters of the deep, right?
And so
The chaotic nothingness.
And so in their mind, it's very much a decreation, and when the waters subside, recreation motif.
Yeah.
Yep.
For the uninitiated, we should probably step through that. So like with the creation story, you see water, then the separation from water and sky, land, fish and birds, plants, and then animals and humans.
Yep.
And in the Noah's destruction, the flood, which is the end of that first cycle, is with Noah's story, that happens in reverse.
Yes. It's an undoing of each of those things.
Yeah. The animals go away, the people go away, the animals go away, the plants get destroyed, the birds go, and the fish go away. Then you're only left with water.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so God is actively reversing creation as an act of judgment. Yeah. And that becomes a pattern. Those words used, flood, multitude, winds, stuff like that, end up becoming the words for judgment throughout the rest of the pattern.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then that brings us to...
It's super cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's super interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So if this is the start and the new start, what is the sin that caused God to undo the world?
In Noah's day?
Yes.
It's specifically violence.
Yes.
Specifically. And it's violence over the whole face of the earth. Because up until that point, he was reacting. He was basically telling them, hey, exile. Exile people. But there was violence over the entire earth. Is the motif that's being communicated at least.
And the one specific line is every every desire in their heart is evil.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've fallen completely into depravity.
Yeah.
And so, like we said, the divine judgment is this deluge, this uncreation, but perseverance? That's the wrong word.
Preservation?
Preservation, that's the right word. He preserves Noah and his family and the animals so that it's not a complete undoing of the world.
A mini Eden.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which will have ties to Jesus that we'll mention later.
And Jonah.
Yeah.
Yes.
We might not mention those. I don't know.
And the remnant.
Yes. After this new start, Noah comes and the second cycle begins with Noah, who is the agent of the sort of an agent of the last one.
Kind of an agent in both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And with this, you see the recreation occur. The water subside. You can see the sky. The birds appear. The land appears. The animals are let out.
Yep.
Plants are grown. As you see a recreation event.
Yes. Spearheaded by Noah and God.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
How does Noah restore right worship?
I feel like I'm being quizzed here, man.
I know.
I'm quizzing you.
He makes God makes a covenant with him. He makes an appropriate sacrifice that is pleasing, sends a pleasing aroma to the Lord. And
Rainbow.
Yes.
yeah,
Rainbow
God makes
time.
a covenant with him. And it seems that it's his obedience and sacrifice that is sort of the return to right worship.
It takes obedience and sacrifice to restore.
Yes.
Technically, actually, to restore the motifs tying together humanity's relationship to God, but also reality's relationship via humanity.
Yes.
Yep.
And so it starts with humanity starting to spread across the earth.
and that's the other obedience is produce, multiply, and
Spread among the earth.
But
spread out.
sin still survives.
Those pork boys, I can't believe it.
Okay.
I don't know.
How dare you?
I miss Joel. He had all the good jokes.
Yeah, I know. Joel's, we're missing. I'm sure the audience is wildly aware that we're missing the comedy.
The spread of sin. How is sin spread according to the Bible and Strongstad?
Mostly human agency and most typified by humanity's rebellion to spread out, but instead congregate in cities.
Yes.
This motif kind of gets lessened the further you go throughout Scripture. But in the beginning of Scripture, it's a very heavy motif.
Right.
Well, as God does, he starts to turn cities into a good thing.
And it may have something to do with ancient cultures' God king complex within cities. Cities in that culture in that time would be ruled by family line, but they would be basically a warrior god warrior king that claimed godhood.
Yeah. And with what happens at Babel, it's fairly self-explanatory that they were rebelling against God.
That's probably the motif. And as that lessens in the local culture, so that commentary against cities also does. Interestingly enough, though, cities are always, generally speaking, the most progressive place within a nation, both in like good things and in bad things.
Right. Here's a thought in real time, as I'm having one.
I'm glad you said that before, but you're about to say what crazy stuff you're about to say.
Josh.
Yes.
You mentioned the how cities are sort of turned into a good thing by God later on.
Yep.
With the Jerusalem and all that.
Yep.
But this made me think of the first cycle, and at least how Strongstad shows it, and how violence is what led to the destruction of the world.
Yep.
But after that, violence is sort of used in a positive way when it comes to the new punishment for murder. Before it was exile, and now it is execution. If that's similar here with with Babel is that cities were bad, and then now God's sort of redeemed that idea even.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd go there.
No.
Well, the pattern you could create is the whole pattern of God makes all things new.
Yeah, but Colton's argument would be that violence is condoned as a weapon of God and his people.
No, I don't think it's condoned as a weapon.
Well, it's not that it's condoned. It's more that God uses, at least if you were to take this turning point theology, that God uses ideas from the previous cycle for good things in the next cycle.
Oh.
Or going forward.
Yeah, because
the thing that led to sin is now being used positively by God.
That's a wild theory, but
not that it's good.
That's an interesting
good.
thought in real time.
Well,
yeah, exactly. I don't know.
Violence isn't inherently evil.
No, it's not inherently evil, but it is a result of the fallen world. So in the new creation, there won't be violence, that kind of thing, when everything is fully redeemed.
Yeah.
Unless people eat animals,
Yes.
then there would be violence.
But then, yeah. All right.
I don't know if that classifies for what we're talking about.
No.
For the same thing.
Because it's murder specifically.
Yes, but then we need to specify murder.
Yeah. Well,
not just
killing animals
violence.
is murder.
Because that would be the separation in the 10 Commandments of do not kill versus do not murder.
Yeah. However, the Israelites do not just kill all of the Canaanite people, they also murder all of their children, which is Colton's point.
Well, that's something I actually didn't even
Okay,
think
we
of.
need to do a whole episode on that at some point.
Yeah. Also, murder isn't the word I would use.
It would not be murder, it would be judgment.
Because murder means unjustified.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's an act of judgment, so it's the same as an execution for sin.
Okay.
Which we can say whether or not we like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Like, I agree with you, but I'm going to just,
throw it
Just,
out.
so everybody knows, this was a thought in real time.
This is a thought in real time.
And as our pre-episode thing says, we don't necessarily believe what we're saying.
yeah, I honestly
I
don't.
believe in 100% of the things I say.
Yeah.
I don't believe you.
You shouldn't.
So cities, yes.
Yep.
The act of judgment is interesting here.
Yes.
Because people get their languages get confused, right? And I mentioned before that the language of the flood is used as the language of judgment in the rest of the Bible. And the connection point here would be is you have order among humanity. They can all communicate properly with each other and understand each other.
Okay.
And God institutes chaos amongst people. They cannot communicate.
That actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Especially with later ones.
Yes. And so the judgment is a returning to not able to communicate. There might as well not be humans. but anyways, you get that same like the water, the symbol of the deep as chaos, unordered potential.
I mean, and then it's just, interesting coincidence that it has to do with vocabulary, which is how the world was brought into being.
Yes.
It's just, that one's just a funny
God created
little...
the world through language.
Yeah.
And now
yeah.
language is the means of destruction.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So they're all confused. They all spread out on the earth.
It's not a coincidence, Caleb. It's the Bible.
Yeah, but it doesn't communicate meaning.
Sorry?
It doesn't communicate meaning other than monkey sees pattern.
Yes.
I don't think that's true.
Okay.
You think it's something intended?
I mean, the theology of language is huge. There's definitely something there. If he's using words as a means of judgment.
Yeah, we can get into that later.
So close to Genesis.
We can get into how deep you can go with biblical theology until you're just reading monkey sees pattern into the Bible.
I think that the charismatic speaking in tongues reflects Babel.
Well,
that's not just a thought in real time. That is actually not a thought in real time because that made no sense.
Thank you.
What do you mean it doesn't make sense?
I'm ending this thought in real time with not thinking.
Let's move on, boys.
Yes.
Well, no, the connection point is Pentecost, but yeah.
Yeah, for Babel, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But after the second, don't want to get bogged down too far. Humanity spreads across the earth because of God. The thing that they were supposed to take into their own hands, now God is basically taking it into his hands. Which, speaking of taking into his own hands, God chooses for the third cycle a person to represent him, and from which all nations will be blessed through, and the world will be blessed.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because this begins a pattern that will come up when we go into some of the typologies. But it's the first instance where a proper, like, how can I put it? There will be in the description of this video, you're going to see a link to an open Word doc. You won't be able to edit it. Nice try anyway. It's the only one of ours you're going to be able to access. But so far. But there's a couple images from the book that Strongstad uses to help communicate how this pattern goes. And if you click on that link, you'll see both the image and the key or the legend to read that image. And so this is the first time you'll notice when you look at the image, there's a little triangle, begins the tip of the triangle moving forward is the single person, Abraham. From him, everyone's blessed. And you can see as that trails off, there's dotted lines as it continues on. And the concept is not only does Israel come about through Abraham, but it's a blessing to the world.
Yes.
And we covered that pretty heavily when we talked about our patriarchs. I don't know about heavily. It was a big theme. You can see it in Abraham when he's in Egypt. You can see it in Isaac when he's with the Philistines. You can see it with Jacob when he's with Laban. And it's this thing that continues to pass on, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. This specific person that we're talking about, who blesses all the nations, is Abraham. Abraham is the one called at the beginning of the cycle to be God's agent. There are two people that are God's agent. There's this and Moses. Moses occurs basically halfway through the cycle, though. He's not the start of a new one, but is sort of continuing Abraham's idea with Israel.
It would be Moses is the fulfillment of the Abrahamic covenant in this specific cycle.
Yes.
Right? The nationhood comes about. But obviously certain things don't fully come about.
Yep.
Yes. Yeah.
Josh agrees.
Most of the covenant, because they don't have land yet.
Yes.
Yeah. Exactly.
So,
yeah.
Which comes in the
Joshua.
Yes.
Me.
No.
So the call of Abraham is called. And as the Old Testament goes on, you see the patriarchs, you see Moses. He comes forth and he kind of changes a little bit of the promise made to Abraham. It's now specifically tied to Israel as a nation.
Well, Israel, out of all of God's descendants, or not, Abraham's descendants, forgive me, out of all of Abraham's descendants, Israel, the ones in captivity in Egypt, they're the chosen ones, right? Retroactively, you can read that as you're going through the patriarchs. You can go, oh, that's the one who gets blessed. That's the one who gets blessed. Yeah. Okay, you can see it. The Bible presents it as an obvious thing. However, it's presented in Exodus as it's like, no, God heard the Israelites crying out in captivity in Egypt, and he called them. He selected them. They are his nation. He's going to bring them to Canaan.
Yep.
Yeah, and then makes a covenant with them.
Yes, and that covenant shouldn't be just skipped over because it's very, very major in terms of especially the coming cycles. Yeah. What Moses ties in with God, the law, is very, very important for even how they fall. Not necessarily in this cycle, although partially.
Well, it's put up as you stay obedient, you remain in the land. Yes, that's oversimplification, but that's the main thing, and you'll see that ends up being the undoing of the next cycle.
Yeah, the theme of Deuteronomy is at least one of the main themes of Deuteronomy is you prosper when you obey God, you will be destroyed if you don't. Yeah. And we see that Israel kind of sucks. They don't really follow Moses super well after he is now the agent of God.
They don't really follow Moses' Like, oh, sorry, I thought you said after Moses.
They don't follow after Moses very well either. But
It's like, no, they don't follow him.
They complain and
during
grumble
Moses.
the whole time.
the whole time, 3 times
Yeah.
specifically. And then it actually, this problem causes Moses to himself
Yeah.
disobey God.
And we say they suck because they complain the whole time, but like, let's be real, we all would, and we all do.
Also,
Oh,
they
yeah.
conquered
Yeah.
quite a few people before
Yeah.
this. So they don't fully suck.
Yeah.
Just
Well,
half suck.
they make it there, and then they turn it down.
Well, that's the thing is
They refuse to trust God to fulfill
They're
His promises.
scared.
Yep. They don't, much like at the beginning of the cycle, where God, Abraham is promised these things, specifically a land, that this generation, of Israelites, where Abraham had faith and it was credited to him as righteousness, they did not have faith in the promises of God, and that's what causes them to disobey.
God has them wander around the desert for 40 years. The old generation dies off.
Yep. And that starts the next one.
Mm-hmm.
With Joshua. Joshua,
Yes.
other Joshua. He starts with where the Canaanites, where the Israelites failed in the previous generation.
Yeah.
They failed to take hold of the promise of God and trust Him. Joshua immediately, specifically obeys God, and through many ways. Yes.
Well, and the connecting point between them is him and Caleb were the only ones that survived from the 40 years of wandering in the desert because God promised them because they were obedient the first time.
Yep.
Yeah.
So,
And so their
'Cause they had faith in God.
obedience is what gets them into the land. I hate saying that because we'll get into the whole how agency works a little bit when we cover the typologies.
It is in terms of this turning point idea that the failure, the sin, is a reflection of the right worship that was restored.
Yeah.
Um,
And so the right worship that is restored in Joshua is him having faith in God's ability to follow through with His promises, that they will conquer the land and that they will settle in it.
Yep.
And so when they do, and you have the whole as for me and my house, we will continue to choose
Exactly.
to serve the Lord, which Joshua knows that they're not going to faithfully serve God. And you see that this play out throughout the historical works, right? You have the judges, and you have Saul, and then you have David, and then you have Solomon, and then the split kingdom.
Yep.
And so you have the spread of sin is them continually breaking that covenant. It's their continual idolatry. The nation is fractured. You have evil kings. In the south, you have a couple more good kings, and that kind of is the reason why they last a little bit longer. But the northern kingdom, Israel, falls in 721 or 22, either one. It's somewhere around there. And then the southern kingdom falls officially in 586, both BC. And then they're brought out to exile, which is the consequence that they knew in Deuteronomy, as in the Mosaic covenant.
which God specifically told them, you're going to fail.
It does, yeah.
Yeah. Which is so sad.
But they go into exile, and it's actually the ones who are pulled away from the land that are the ones that are kept. They're the remnant.
Yes.
And the ones who stay, they are not. And so the promise that's the fourth, the start, the quote unquote fourth start, or the resting place of the cycle, the fourth cycle is sorry.
Oh, and I was just going to say, and the continuation of that creation and destruction motif is you have the creation of a nation
And the destruction of
and
that
the
nation.
destruction of the nation. But the language used for the destruction the language used of the creation of the nation is it becomes plentiful, there's water, there's a lot of crops and stuff like that. And then you see it degrade over time. You see in the destruction, you see it's left as a wasteland. The multitudes.
The reason what's described as actually, I just realized this. It's described as tohu v'bohu.
Yes.
which is
also
Complete emptiness and chaos.
Yeah.
Which we should go back. That's also the way the wilderness is described.
Yes.
Yeah.
The wilderness is described
the wilderness
as,
wanderings,
right.
which is the way Genesis 1 describes the
creation
itself before God's creative endeavors.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that. Man,
Yeah.
I'm dumb.
But that's true for both the beginning of the creation of the nation and the destruction of the 40 years in the wilderness.
Yes.
So it's described, the 40 years that they're in there dying is described as tohu vabohu, unfilled and unformed, uninhabitable.
Yep.
And at the beginning of the creation of the nation is the same thing.
Interesting.
And then at the end, you see the same water motifs. The multitudes come crashing down from all around them. If you think of Israel as like earth surrounded by the deep, comes down crashing around them. God stops protecting them from the deep, stops protecting them from the enemy nations. The destruction reduces them back to a wasteland. Same idea. But like with the Noah motif, a remnant, the family, the few that were obedient, mostly obedient, get taken away by the means of destruction.
Yeah.
The boat goes with the waves just as the Israelites get taken away by the army that destroyed them.
Sure.
And they survive.
Oh, the means of destruction in the Tower of Babel. You have the...
Yep.
This is...
Yeah.
Guys, you guys are so smart. I read the book and I didn't even make these connections.
They're connections I especially got from classes.
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah.
Especially.
Because, I don't remember those specific connections in this book.
No. Especially the motif of destruction and creation. No, it's not in the book. Not really.
It's specifically that's our professor head's addition to
Yeah.
the class.
Who studied under Strongstad.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
I don't feel like name dropping you quite yet.
no.
This sounds an awful lot like James M. Hamilton Jr.'s, what is it? The Glory of God through in Salvation Through Judgment.
Yeah.
I need to read it. You haven't started it yet,
No,
either.
because he doesn't go through the cycles. He goes through all acts of destruction because you see the same words used in the destruction of Egypt and like stuff like that. So like, so like there's more judgments for the reader.
Yes,
There's more
yes.
judgments than these. These are cosmic.
Yeah, it does.
Seen as cosmic judgments.
I would just,
yeah.
It seems as though that's a biblical theology that specifically picks up on that theme, and he follows it throughout the entire Bible.
Yeah.
Finally, fifth cycle.
Yep.
Fifth cycle. Joshua.
Son of Shealtiel. Not you, Joshua.
No.
Not again. Although, again, this pattern.
The high priest.
Yes.
And you see a reconnection to an older theme, which is the connecting him to this. Sorry, this is where the theme is easier seen than in the past. But now that you've gotten to this point, you can look into it as past, is the merger of king and priest. Because Joshua is through... so Joshua and Zerubbabel. Zerubbabel is the descendant of the king.
Yep.
And
he is David's heir.
yeah. And Joshua is the high priest. And now if you look back on the previous versions, you see Joshua, who is both the one that reads the word of God and leads them into to the nation. Moses, who created them the law, gave them the law, which is what kings do, and was the prophet that spoke on God's behalf. You've got Noah, who offered the sacrifice, but is also the only human alive. And then you've got
His family,
the ruler of his family. And then you've got Adam and Eve, who are the priests. All the working of the garden is used in priestly languages
and regency language.
And regency language, kingship. And so you see, it wasn't obvious earlier on for us readers, but because of the fifth cycle, when you see Joshua and Zerubbabel as paired people, you can look back and go, oh.
Yeah. And you have them, like as mentioned the first time going through, there's that hypocrisy with their heart is no longer in their worship, which continues through into the sixth cycle, which we get the final Joshua.
Yep.
Jesus.
Yes. To end off the fifth cycle, their judgment comes in, or their judgment and their sin specifically is they have false hypocrisy, that they're not following the law, but also part of that, I think, at least, I don't remember if Strongstad heavily ties this, is the rejection of the Son of God.
Yep. But I think that is because they're
Yes.
hypocritic. Ugh. their whatever, their false worship in heart is actually false worship.
Yep.
Which is the claim made in Malachi and the claim made by Jesus when it's like, if you were actually children of Israel, if you actually knew the law, if you not read, have you not, you would know that it points to me.
Yep.
You know, and the whole idea is if you
Right.
actively followed through the things that you say you did, you would hear the voice of God.
Yes.
If you were a child of God, and you're not.
Absolutely.
And so that's the merging of those two.
And before we talk about the destruction of the Second Temple, because that kind of happens after the start of the sixth cycle, the sixth cycle opens up with the New Testament, beginning with John the Baptist. Not Jesus, really, although Jesus is also one of the agents. John the Baptist prepares the way for Jesus to come.
Yep.
And then Jesus himself starts the sixth cycle. The restoration of right worship comes in, like you said, that the Pharisees were not obeying the law properly, that Jesus came to redeem humanity through him as a fulfillment of the law.
Yeah, well, it gets into that thing with Noah that you see, and you see it in other places as well. It takes a sacrifice and obedience.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Well, and what Jesus does that the priests don't, which is getting into that hypocrisy, is he fulfills also like Micah 6:8, which is God's like prophetic utterance to the priesthood and all of Israel. But as I'll just read the verse. He has told you, O man, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you, but to do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God.
So,
and Jesus does that. They are not, though they have all the trappings of a priest.
So in the sixth cycle, which is, sorry if I'm just going to go on for a little bit. In the sixth cycle, you have John the Baptist, which kind of pre-starts the whole thing, right? And he is the voice that comes before. But he himself, he is a voice to the change. This is one of the things I kind of wish Strongstad was a little more explicit with it. There's agents of change, and then there's voices of the change. There's an agent/voice. We'll get into that a little bit more in just after when we cover the seventh cycle. Jesus himself is the actual agent of change, and that's like that first cycle, that first part of the first cycle, the actual the new start, if you will. And then something that still carries on, and this is where his sixth and seventh cycle kind of blur together, and they also blur together in actual history. We're still actively following it out because new Christians and the work of the apostles, the biblical text itself, and we are participating in that active change, that ministry of Christ as the church.
One of the agents is the church.
And so one of the interesting things then is there's a slight reversal in what spreads. There's not just a spread of sin. Now there's a spread of this gospel, this transforming, life-giving, righteous providing ministry of Christ offered through his death and resurrection and ascension. And it's how we actively participate. And so it's the fulfillment of a bunch of the other previous promises, which we can get into perhaps in other episodes as well. But hidden in with that, and you see it in the New Testament, that there's going to be people that are going to come to Christ. There's this, instead of spread of sin, there's a spread of the gospel explodes across, which is huge in Acts, and is a big point in Strongstad's book. Actually, he spends a lot of time camping right on that specific point, the explosion of the gospel into the ends of the earth, which is I find it funny that Rome, which is the highest center of pagan power in the Roman world, is the place where Acts ends, where the gospel goes to. The implication being, at least tongue-in-cheek wise, the furthest place away from God, the end of the earth, is the highest place in pagan power. And the gospel has reached it in the end of Acts.
Right, yeah.
I think that's funny.
That's really cool, yeah.
That's a thought in real time.
I never even thought about that, yeah.
But yeah, however, in the Bible, in the New Testament, you still have, yes, but there will be days where they abandon, where people will abandon Christ, and mass persecution will come, and judgment will follow after that. And so, yeah, that's kind of Sorry, I'm taking over your job there, Colton.
No, it's all good. Like you said, the Jesus, John the Baptist, and the church are all part of the same cycle. The cycle doesn't end with Jesus's death and resurrection. Like there's this new thing. It continues the work of Jesus before he died to further on. It's more about his teaching and spreading his name than it is about now that Christ has come. There's this dispensational treatment of.
What?
Wow, I know a Pentecostal who doesn't believe in dispensationalism.
Most
Crazy.
Pentecostals don't believe in dispensationalism until it comes to eschatology.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right.
Because we are a eclectic hodgepodge of things.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Something should be noted is that Strongstad's book, half of it is dedicated to the first 5 cycles and the Old Testament, whereas the 6th and 7th cycle, the 6th cycle specifically is 5 chapters or half of the book long. And then the 7th cycle's, I don't want to say a chapter, it's 5 pages.
Is it?
It is 5 or 6 pages.
Yeah, because we don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
Other than
he
it's
also,
just perfect.
Oh man, he does.
Well,
Yeah,
the 6th
you're right.
cycle,
It's just dispensational eschatology, right? Like
The
I've
6th
read
cycle?
it. The 7th. I've read it. That's the vibe I got at least.
I didn't see it as much. It's more like a conclusion more than it is. The 7th cycle is a conclusion more so than this is now how it works.
Yeah. No more spread of sin.
The
Maybe
spread
I'm
of
just more
sin.
negative.
Yeah, the spread of sin in the 6th cycle is it's at least Strongstad talks about how it spreads to the ends of the earth and culminates in the Antichrist and stuff like that.
Yeah.
The eschatological talks that happen in Revelation and Thessalonians and stuff like that.
It's a classical Pentecostal view of eschatology. It's
Probably the most common view in evangelicals.
in evangelicalism, sure. Yeah.
So then what's the judgment that comes of the 6th cycle?
Christ's return.
Christ's return. Christ's return is also the new start of the next cycle, but it also is part of the judgment itself of this one, which is why the 7th cycle is a little confusing, because everything at the end of the 6th cycle is the 7th cycle to an extent, except for the thrust of it pointing towards the future.
Well, and that's the connection that we've kind of made separate from his story, which is the pattern that I think sadly he either for space or didn't see, which I'm not going to assume that Roger Strongstad didn't see this, is the means of destruction is the path to salvation. So just as the Noah is put on the boat and taken with the waves and saved, the Israelites taken by the remnant taken by the destroying army and brought, and they flourish outside of the land. Jesus, as the judge, is also the redeemer of the saved. So he comes and just separates the sheep and the goats, destroys the world, but he's also the one that saves the remnant, the faithful. And so that weird interplay there is what we've been hinting. It doesn't. The book doesn't. That Jesus, like the flood in the ark and the army, he is both the thing that saves and the thing that destroys. He is the judgment of God and the redemption of God.
He is also the at the start of the cycle, he is the restoration of right worship, and he is the because people didn't follow him, he is also the judgment upon it. But the 7th cycle, to round it off, the cycles. The 7th cycle is the second coming of Jesus Christ. This lasts until, eternity, forever.
Until undefined, because
we don't know.
we don't know.
Because the 7th cycle doesn't follow the pattern, because sin doesn't spread.
Yes.
And Joshua is also the agent of this.
Yes.
Not Jesus, which means Joshua.
Yes.
A lot of Joshuas.
Yes. It's a good name.
Again, the sin that was on it. Yeah, you would say that. The sin that was on the world was the rejection of God. That all the powers are against God, and the unholy Trinity is the culmination of that. The beast, false prophet, and dragon. God's wrath is finally poured on the world as judgment, and the second death that's given to the unrighteous and eternal life to the children of God is the restoration. And after this, what it says, it is finished. There's nothing past this point. There's nothing to be fulfilled. There's no continuation of turning points because now it is turned.
Yeah.
This is the end of the cycle.
Yeah, and that's Strongstad's seven cycle framework essentially. There's a couple points that I would like to point out with the typologies. Typology is a reoccurring and compounding pattern.
Do you want to define typology quick?
I just did.
Oh, perfect.
It's okay. So agents, obviously, Colton brought it up a couple times. First cycle, you have Adam and Noah. They're both agents of change. Strongstad just calls them agents, but I think drawing
Secret
distinctions, it actually illuminates another thing that he gets into slightly. So yeah, second cycle is, again, Noah, but this time it's New Covenant. Third cycle, Abraham, which is New Covenant, and Moses, which is an agent of change and New Covenant. Fourth cycle, Joshua, which is an agent of change. Samuel, in his book, is made out to be a voice of change. So testimony to the things that are going on. And David, New Covenant. Fifth cycle, Joshua, agent of change. Zerubbabel, agent of change. Ezra, Nehemiah, and Michael are then voices of change. Things are happening and things are coming. Right? Fifth cycle, Jesus is the agent and voice of change and New Covenant that fulfills all the previous. He's everything. You have the 12 disciples, which are voices of change. You have Paul, which is another voice of change, and you have the church, which would encapsulate the previous two, which are participatory agents and voices of change via the present Spirit.
Yes.
And as a Pentecostal, Strongstad kind of makes a bigger deal out of that than it would be commonly seen in other theological discourses.
Well, and the other connection that in the book of John is in Jesus' priestly prayer and in his promises to the church, which is you will do what I have done.
Yes.
Because just as I am in the Father and he is in me, so will you be in me, and therefore you will be in the Father. And the way you do that is through the Spirit in you.
Yes.
So the reason we're agents of change, not
it's Christ's continual work via the Spirit in his corporate body, quote unquote.
Yes.
In the church.
Yeah.
And in the seventh cycle, you have him, Jesus, Joshua again, as the final agent of change. And so Strongstad points it out lightly. I would like to point it out more specifically. Behind all the previous, God is the primary cause of all the agents. It's not them causing it. He chooses who he will act through in the agents of change, speak through in the voices of change, and make covenants with. However, in Jesus, who is God incarnate, he is the culmination of all the previous. He is the one who causes the change. He is the one who is the voice of the change, and he is the one who makes the new covenant. And so it's another compounding typology that can be seen. Another quick one is how the covenants work, which I think is a far more natural way to see the Bible itself. I think we've mentioned this previously, where it's covenantal theology appears to take the Bible, appears to respect the Bible's divisions a little bit more. Not saying that the others don't, but the actual theology that comes out of it appears to try to hug closer to what the original authors would have understood.
Yep.
One of the interesting things, and you'll see this also in the file that you'll get a link to in the bottom of the YouTube video here, is there's the Abrahamic covenant is about all nations, or it's who all nations will be blessed through, and it's kind of like this all-encompassing thing. However, things continually get more focus point until it becomes one person, being Jesus. So you have Abraham, which is a all nations covenant, kind of. Then you have Moses, which is one nation. You are God's nation now. And then you have Davidic, which is a family line, dynasty. Yep. And then in Jesus, you have it is one man, but again opened up for all nations. And so that's an interesting little pattern. In
Starts
covenants.
as one man, and then the second time he comes back, all nations.
Yeah. And you can see that with it is the response. Paul gets into this in Romans, where it's the response to the one man who brought in sin to all nations. So all nations will be brought down to the salvation of all of them in the one man. And so it's kind of like a diamond. At the one side you have Adam, it spreads to all nations, and then it funnels back down into Jesus on the other point. And that's the two. Yeah, we kind of went over restoration of right worship.
Do we have time to talk about it? There's a couple of things I think are interesting. If we don't have time, we
if
don't
you're
have to talk
super quick.
about it. I can be super quick.
I think we have time.
The restoration of right worship, we talked about it lightly with some of them, but as the agents restore right worship, that is basically, at least in Strongstad stuff, this is more stuff that I noticed and that I was more taught, but is a theme even in his book if he doesn't fully see it. The restoration of right worship is what the standard, basically, that which the sin that they fall to is held to.
Can you?
Yes, I can rephrase that.
Okay, please. Thank you.
The reason why judgment is enacted upon that cycle is because they have contradicted the right worship that was established at the beginning.
Right.
Which, yes, is restoration of right worship, which implies that it's the same as the beginning, but is specific to that cycle, which, again, fully culminates in Jesus. But the first cycle, the right worship, is obedience to God. And obviously, man falls, they sin, they fall away, and over the entire earth.
Well, yeah, it's working the garden and taking care of it, and they don't.
And they don't, exactly.
Yeah.
And so right worship is reestablished in the second cycle through the building of altars and sacrifice and the Noahic covenant. This spread among the earth and repopulate all of this. And obedience to God. This is the standard that they're held to. And the Babel contradicts that. They are not obedient to God. In fact, they try to basically wage a war against him, if you want to hold more extreme language.
Yeah.
And they don't spread it across the earth. With the third cycle, Abraham has faith, and that's credited to him as righteousness. And by the end, faith in that God will give him a land and a nation. Whereas at the end of the cycle, with Israel trying to get into the wilderness, they do not have faith that God will protect them and give them what is promised to them.
Which is interesting because it's articulated as we don't have faith that God will fulfill his word.
Yes.
That God is being honest.
Yes.
And I think that's the through line.
Absolutely.
For that is Adam and Eve's problem. That's the people of you see that's the core of the spread of sin. Is God trustworthy? What does he fulfill his covenants? Will he fulfill the promises he made to me?
Sure.
And ironically enough, through judgment, God is faithful.
Yes.
God is proven faithful.
Quickly with the fourth cycle, you see a more microcosm of this idea in Judges. This whole idea of turning points. Judges is turning point theology, essentially. That there's Israel forgets God, nation comes to oppress them, judges raised up, an agent is raised up to save them, and right worship is restored through them.
Yeah, sure. It's many turning
it's
points.
Just a tiny little microcosm of this idea.
Yeah.
But at the beginning, Joshua obeys the commandments of God, which is now through the law. As for me and my house, we will follow the Lord. They will serve him and they will worship him alone. The end of this cycle is Israel with the Israel kingdom. They right away break this idea.
Jeroboam
Jeroboam
right off the deep end, just boom.
And that is why they're taken away first.
Yeah, and God actually talks to Jeroboam in a dream. I think it's a dream. Either that or it's just a vision.
Yes.
And he's just like, hey, if you do this, I will bless you and make you prosperous. And he's like, nah. Excuse me.
Yeah, exactly.
And as a result of idolatry, worshiping many gods and not just one, like Joshua did there.
And it just gets worse and worse
Yeah.
and worse. Israel's led away. With the second kingdom, this is why I think Strongstad breaks it up. Hezekiah restores right worship for a time. As he sees the northern kingdom falling to, because he might not see it's because of their idolatry, he removes the idolatry in Israel.
Judah.
In Judah, and that is what protects them. Josiah does the same thing, except at that point it's a little too late. And they are eventually let out because they fell away and do not worship God anymore.
Yeah.
The fifth cycle, the rebuilding of the temple, the restoration of lawful practice and festivals, and the expulsion of foreigners are what considers them to be righteous at the beginning. That is the restoration of right worship. However, at the end, they desecrate the temple using many, many things. The abomination that brings desolation, if you want to use that, but just
but I think it's
Antiochus.
it's ultimately the thing that judges them is their false worship, and most
Absolutely.
specifically, it's their false worship which gets them not to desecrate a temple, meaning the second, but the temple, meaning Christ Himself.
Yes,
And that's the judgment bringing
yes,
effect, because their false worship, which started in the heart, as in the not actually trying to have a contrite heart before God, actually manifests in full-blown false worship of God.
yes. You're right. We talked a little bit about how the later cycles tend to kind of change.
And we'll get into the strengths
methodology.
and weaknesses right before closing here.
Yeah, but this idea of Ezra and what Ezra and Nehemiah talk about restoration, they desecrate the temple. They do not. They uphold the festivals poorly, like you said, and they use the practices wrongly, even though they still obey them, and they do not expel the foreigners that keep coming to them.
Yeah.
Romans, although that's kind of not their fault.
Well, yeah, and then you see in Jesus, they're following the letter of the law, but not the heart of the law.
Yeah, and they follow the wrong king, which was restored at the beginning as well. Not just they don't follow Jesus, but they also have Herod.
Yeah, but I think the motifs are meant to bleed into the sixth cycle beginning with Christ.
Yes.
I think those are the connections that are meant to be made.
For sure.
Yeah.
Especially in what Strongstad's trying to talk about. We talked a little bit about the sixth cycle, how it is trust and belief in Jesus and his teachings and his word that is the restoration of right worship. That he has redeemed all people if they accept him. The end of this is the people reject him completely. And they follow a different Trinity or a different idea of God.
The beasts, as
beast.
Revelation put forward.
Seventh cycle doesn't have that. But
the restoration of right worship in that sense would be Christ's return.
Yep.
The purging of sin and death.
Well, then that connects back to your Genesis point, is that it's all about, is God trustworthy? And it's, do you have faith in Jesus or do you not?
Yeah.
Do you reject his faithfulness?
Yeah.
But
these typologies are very interesting.
yeah.
And some of them are seen more clearly in his book and some of them aren't. But this whole idea of turning points as terms of like a whole Bible theology or a continual line of theology through the Bible.
Well, we're going to get into that, right, with the strengths and weaknesses.
Exactly, yeah. It's better in some places and worse in others.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Josh, can you lead us through some of the strengths and weaknesses, and then we'll start wrapping this up.
So first of all, we have one of the major strengths of this biblical theology is it does follow the whole length of the biblical canon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It creates a organization for you to see the biblical story and arc through, and then in turn, our story and the whole of the future, our hope in.
It even articulates our
Frames it all.
place in that story.
Yeah. It creates a good frame to grasp the relationship between God's justice and mercy, holiness and patience.
Yeah.
Right. When does God see fit it just to judge the world? And when does he see it fit to be patient?
Sure.
What is his demand of holiness? What is right worship? And what is not.
Right.
Where does God draw the line? Because we don't, our idea of justice and mercy, some people want it really hard. Some people want condoning sin. And it's hard to draw the line as humans of where
it's
that should go.
The consistency of the unchanging God is, I think, very evident throughout all 7 cycles.
Yeah. And then lastly, it helps the reader understand the cosmic story that the believer is living in and what role they play. You, as we've learned, are an agent and a voice of change, partnering with Christ.
Yeah.
He is working through you, just like he worked through Adam, Noah, 2 other Joshuas, and a guy named Abraham. Yeah.
A guy named Abraham.
And a guy
I'm just
named
going to start listing Old Testament people now.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's great. That's great.
I would like to add one more
'Kay.
strength I've been thinking of.
We'll see if we agree. But
We might not, but I think we will. It also, I think that this book helps to give a somewhat different approach in Pentecostalism to dispensationalism. Yes, most Pentecostals don't follow dispensationalism, but a lot of them say they do. And this gives the same idea of there's
it
turning
explains-
points.
Sure.
But they're
okay.
not connected to the covenants. They're not connected to how God treats humanity. It's connected through themes.
Okay. As an alternative, I can respect that.
I don't think it's perfect, but I think it's better than dispensationalism.
Well, actually, to the point of it communicates the consistency of the unchanging God and his
Exactly, yeah.
characteristics.
which is the major failure of dispensationalism is that
So-
God changes.
Yeah. So fair enough. I don't think it does enough in the 4th and 5th cycle, which we'll get into the weaknesses. Actually, can we just jump right into the weaknesses? with
Yeah,
that?
let's jump right into the weaknesses. So because it discusses the cosmic story, it lacks groundedness. What I mean by that is because it's talking about the overarching story of the Bible, it doesn't talk about it lacks the thorough nature of the Bible itself, which is trying to understand how God works in every person's life.
Sure. It's not immediately practical, which
yes.
is an issue just with biblical theology in general.
Yep.
Yeah.
Not an issue. It is a pattern that can often be seen.
Yes.
It's something difficult to handle in biblical theology.
Yeah. Well, because in this one, you see what's the applicable aspect to this, and it's be in right worship.
Yep.
Don't get judged.
Yeah. Be in right worship, and now you know maybe a little bit more about the Bible.
Yeah.
That's it.
And then that leads to the second one. We kind of talked about this. It touches it. So it does not gel with the Bible's self-declared covenant structure, though it does attempt to relate with it.
Yeah. I think a respectful amount.
It tries.
But it is an arbitrary, at least in my opinion, overlaying of a pattern that a human mind sees. As good as that is.
Yes.
To say that, well, the Bible is this then? And like,
well,
sure,
I would
yeah.
say,
Yeah.
I would say it's a pattern in the text. Like it's one of many patterns.
It takes patterns within the Bible, and it kind of,
I would
like
say
you're
it
saying, I think
prioritizes patterns.
it does. It also codifies them into a thing that probably shouldn't be codified.
Well, I don't know about shouldn't. I don't think it's bad to do it. Right. It's bad to elevate it and say this is the story of the Bible.
Okay.
This is the biblical theology.
Yeah.
And you can say that Strongstad is well aware of that when he says a Pentecostal biblical theology.
Yeah.
He's not making the theology
This
of
is
the
the
New
theology.
Testament.
and
we
that's
believe, yeah.
specifically why I said it's a pattern in the story, not the whole pattern of the whole Bible. Because as our professor made the point, the whole Bible does that.
Yeah.
But
The best biblical theology is the Bible itself.
yes.
Wow.
But then also you've got the 6th and 7th cycle confronts issues with apocalyptic and prophetic interpretation.
Absolutely.
Because depending on where you fall with when the millennium happens, if the millennium happens, when Jesus comes back, determines when and what the end of the 6th cycle looks like,
Especially
and
the
the beginning
7th.
of the 7th.
Yeah. Especially the 7th cycle.
Because is the 7th cycle, if it's the amillennial view, then it ends with the destruction of everything, and then the 7th cycle is just new creation and we're good. If it's where you have Christ comes and then reigns for a bit, and there's the fight with
Satan after he's let out of the pit and all the whatever.
And so then there's a period, there's another seventh cycle. The seventh cycle is more sin and then destruction.
Yeah. And the clear sin that leads to the next cycle is, at least in an amillennial view, not very clear at all. Because it's
there wouldn't really be one.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's, if I'm allowed to add another weakness.
Yep. We added one strength, so we're only allowed to add one weakness.
There we go.
The terminology and his pattern does not always fit every single cycle. Like we're talking about that with the sixth and seventh cycles, but I think you can find little weaknesses throughout all of them.
Yeah,
where it doesn't super fit. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that it's bad. Here's the I gave this a rough review on our website. To be honest with you, I was the one who gave it a 2.5 out of 5.
It's still better than my cover review.
Yes. The reason I should, you know what, looking back on it, I should actually raise that higher. Is it fills a niche that doesn't really exist, which is it's not big enough to go into depth, but it's just big enough to make big claims. Right?
Okay.
And it doesn't have the space to actually formulate those weaker areas, and they're just there. So I don't find the framework that convincing as like it totally fits. I find it helpful to articulate the biblical narrative as a whole, but I don't find it overall convincing.
Well, again, I also don't think it's a pattern of the biblical narrative. I think it's a pattern of judgment.
Sure.
It's a pattern of recreation and judgment.
Right.
And for that, I think it does a good job. It shows you God's redemptive arc and man's sin and God's desire to judge sin and his desire to save humanity. And so,
in a very broad sense, I agree with you. I also agree with Caleb that it, much like one of their weaknesses, is that it discusses the cosmic story. It doesn't ground itself super well. It doesn't talk about specific instances of sin, just more like this one specific one that tends to precede some form of judgment, which is fair because that happens. But
yes, and I don't think those two ideas are exclusive.
No, not necessarily. Before we round off, do we want to give what we would say out of 5 what this book is? Because it's basically a giant book review.
3 out of 5.
Okay. Yeshua.
I would say 3 as well.
All right.
And just so everybody knows, my ratings of book covers does not affect my rating of the book's content.
That's funny.
Didn't Joel give it a 4?
Joel gave it a 4.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know what Stewart said. I don't know if he has said anything about it.
No, I don't know if he's read it.
Right.
Stewart did not do well in the class. This was the one class I was better than him at, and he just couldn't get what the teacher was trying to get from him.
Oh, hey, Stewart.
That's hi.
How's it
You're
listening
bad.
to that?
Yeah.
Stewart and I have a great relationship surrounding this class.
My review, my final review would be 3 as well, which is weird that we all kind of agree. I think it has a lot of good points, like probably the same as you guys. Has a lot of good points, a lot of interesting ideas, but I don't think it's perfect.
Sure. Yeah. Well, that's our first, maybe even a little bit long-winded, but that's our first episode on biblical theology, our ongoing series. I don't know what we're going to cover next. Probably something in the short studies of biblical theology, which you've heard us talk about in the What Have You Read, and maybe even seen it on the blog, on our website, on the book review section. Check that out. Check more book reviews. See the blog posts. We try to post more. There hasn't been much activity, but you know what? I think there's going to be more when we kind of get out of school, and I'll have a bunch of school papers so that I can modify and throw up there. But yeah, if you're listening to us on YouTube, check us out on our audio platforms on Spotify or Apple podcast. Or if you're on those, check out give us some comments on our YouTube channel. You know, in dialogue with us is what we're looking for. Check out our Instagram. Also, more interaction. Joel does some fun stuff on there, some polls, it's far more lighthearted, a lot of jokes. That's kind of fun. If you want to send us a more in-depth conversation, email us. Tell us what you're thinking. Tell us, you know, what you liked, what you didn't like about this episode, what biblical theology you think we should do next even. Yeah, and share the podcast with whoever you'd think would find this interesting. Our mission statement is just to start dialogue.
Or even if they wouldn't find it interesting.
Yeah, that too. But I don't want to put you in a sticky situation because I know I always listen to everybody who tells me to share their stuff, right? Anyway,
should we just end it?
I think so. I think this is the part where we end it.
Okay.
Yeah, the reason we bring it up is that